Before you ask for headcount, tell me why AI can't do it. That one line from Shopify CEO made headlines this week when he announced to his entire team that if they wanted new individuals and new headcount, they had to tell him why AI wasn't able to do the role and why they needed to hire a new person. Now, not just in tech circles, but across really all industries, this really struck a nerve because it wasn't just about budgets or productivity. It was really a deeper provocation. What is the work that actually matters? But what was really interesting is if you read beyond the headlines, there was actually a very human centered approach to the entire email that he sent to his team, really encouraging them and motivating them about all the different ways in which they could be creative, all the different ways in which he encouraged them to experiment with AI and not just experiment, but to collaborate with each other. This memo wasn't about technology. It was a challenge to every leader, every team, and really, we would say even every school. How are you preparing people to not just use AI, but to work differently because of it? The Shopify CEO's memo wasn't a technology memo, it was a culture memo. And that's really what we're going to focus on today.
How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin? And how do you develop the mindset and skills to be successful? You're listening to Designing Schools, and I'm your host, Dr. Sabba Quidwai, educator, researcher, and storyteller. Join me each week for stories and strategies that bridge the gap between research and practice, as together we explore how might we design schools.
This week, three big announcements dropped, one from Google, one from OpenAI, and one from Canva. Although I'm going to say we're going to reserve Canva for next week because it just deserves a whole episode of its own. And while these might look like just routine product updates, they are actually part of the same shift. The reason you have people like the CEO of Shopify saying the things he is because of these updates that we are starting to see more and more almost every single day.
The one thing, I will say about the letter is like many people who read it, I was first drawn to what I believe was the sixth bullet point. Oh, everybody's going to be replaced. And it's really you who highlighted to me that it was about much more than that. And first of all, they're providing the supports that was stated in there. They're making the tools available. So when you're thinking about a school or a business, you want to make these opportunities available to your employees. The second thing, and you mentioned this, it's collaborative. We're all learning. Some of the things are not going to go well, but he talked about, hey, we can all share these on the Slack and we learn from one another. And the third thing, it's not just you employees or you teachers, like you go use this and figure it out. It's everybody, the C-suite or the district administration, or the school leadership, however you want to define it, like they're all involved and we're all figuring it out. And the fourth thing I would say is that it's not just a tool, because he says there's no tool that can really 10x and evolve within itself. So it's a tool in some ways, and there are tool elements, but it has a lot of potential beyond that. Me, I can be a little verbose, and when I write something, it's too long. I just said he had a lot of really incredible ideas in this short amount of space. And with the media, they want to pick up on the one headline that I got sucked into, but there's really a lot more there in the message and a lot to think about as we move into this AI world.
With the biggest one from his letter being that AI is no longer just something fun to play or tinker with, but it really is a baseline expectation. And so one of the things we say a lot is there are signals all the time about what we need to know for the future of learning, leading, collaborating, working, just living in a world with AI, and it is being redefined in real time. And being able to pick up on these signals and lean into them is really what I think is going to set you apart and keep you ahead and keep you not feeling intimidated by these changes, but really optimistic and empowered to be, okay, this is what's here. And I always say if you do it step by step, it's a lot easier than having to play catch up. So today, let's go ahead and start with Google, because what they just rolled out isn't just about AI tools and docs or slides. It is an entirely new vision for how we are going to work. It's automation, entrepreneurship, and kind of all the things that we know that everybody needs to be successful in a world that's changing, but also just like things that we haven't had access to before. So let me just go ahead and share with you guys some of the things that Google released. So when they just rolled out this latest wave of AI features for Workspace, there was one line that really stood out to me in one of the videos, and that was, We need tools that help us work better together, more efficiently. And that is not just a product announcement. I think this is a big thing we noticed across the board in all of the announcements. They weren't just product updates. These were really statements about the direction of work itself. And if you are leading a school, a team, or preparing students for what's ahead, it is really time to start paying attention. Like we said earlier, this is just now an expectation. When Google builds agentic workflows, adds writing coaches into Docs, and launches tools that generate video and audio from scratch, they're not just upgrading their tools, they are completely reshaping what's possible of collaboration, of clarity, and of speed. I think it's also really important to note that we are now literally in a global economy. It was definitely a theme that came through in a lot of their talks that work is just inefficient across time zones. Let's make it better. And your competition today, if we're thinking about young people, isn't just the person sitting next to you in class, it's people all over the world. And those who learn how to use these tools better and faster and more creatively are really going to be the ones who win. So let's take a look at some of the key updates and why they really matter. Google is introducing what it calls Workspace Flows. This probably was my favorite. These are multi-step automations powered by custom AI agents called gems. And I will say here as well that they have actually made gems free inside of Google Workspace for Education, which I think is just awesome. And they are so easy to build. These agents don't just react to a command like a regular prompt. They reason, they can reference your files, and they can carry out tasks with context. But here's the thing that we always say in our workshops all the time. You can't just plug in tools like these and just expect transformation or just turn on a button and let everyone know that this is now available. You really, really have to think through workflows, rethink roles, redesign how value is being created and what people are really going to be, what they're going to be doing that are really going to make them differentiate themselves from this technology. The technology is here. It's coming more and more by the day, but the strategy is really still on us.
I really think that when I first saw all the tools roll out and they rolled them out in a video and they have a pretty good blog that explains them all, I thought of you actually right away because I started thinking of them all as teammates. When I've been talking to people, I found it a good way to explain a lot of these tools, whether they're teammates in the classroom or they're teammates in the workforce. I think that they're all very important. The second thing I will say is I started doing a little bit of work in a Google Doc project today that I'm working on, a book, and some of these things are now live in the space. For example, it'll say, oh, with the notebook LLM, I know you'll talk through some of these. You can summarize it. You can summarize it like an oral form. You can process it. Right now, it just props up. If I look over on my screen here, it says, prioritize the task and send me an email reminder to follow up. So I think the one thing I wanted to say that as you explain some of these, that I really think it's helpful to think of them as teammates, to think about how to integrate them into your workflow and to know that they're already live in a lot of the Google spaces. I know that they're rolling them out across the network. So when you look, you may or may not have it, but a lot of people have access to these already.
Absolutely. You've been reminding me, I've been meaning to make that chapter, I think it's chapter 21 or 22 of the book, From Tools to Teammates, free for people, because when we wrote that, it was last year. So maybe this is a good time to do it. So if you're listening right now.
Because a lot of,
right?
a lot of schools, they have Gemini accounts. A lot of people have Google Workspaces with these accounts in there, and they might even go into their Google Drive and be almost shocked when it's asking if I want to summarize this document. It actually allows you to summarize a folder too. I was looking at one of the guidances we were working on, and I just tried it. I said, oh, summarize this district's guidance. And I was familiar with it because we worked on it. And then I was like, wow, this is a really good summary.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really, really is incredible. So you touched on something, which is the next update, and that is audio in Google Docs. So they are now rolling out the ability to turn docs into audio, either full readings or podcast style overviews. Now, if you remember a few months ago, the feature that really, I think, put Gemini on the map and just Google on the map was Notebook LM, which was where you can upload up to 100 sources. Think like being able to talk to your notes and they talking back to you. You can do YouTube videos, websites, PDFs, you name it, you can put it all in there. And it synthesizes all the information and turns it into a podcast with 2 hosts. And they are now rolling that out across everything, which, you know, what's really awesome about that? So like the design sprint, right? This come up with a great idea in 5 days, roll it out. So first of all, that's like Google's method, right? That they came up with, but they actually used that method to create Notebook LM. And I wanted to highlight that because I think a lot of times when people do try to do these kinds of changes, they do think about these integrations, they try to think of everything all at once. Google, they had so many features. They're now slowly starting to roll everything else out. but they just did one thing that got people motivated, that got people excited and got them enthusiastic. And now people are so much more invested, right? So you can build and scale as you go, but really zoning in on one thing that's going to make that difference is really where you can get a lot of buy-in from people. So this audio overview in Google Docs is a simple feature, but a huge shift in how people are going to start engaging with their content. For students who process information better through listening, this is going to open up entirely new pathways. For teachers, it's a tool for refining tone, catching awkward phrasing, or sharing key insights in a more accessible format with your students. As leaders, being able to just hear board policies or memos or meeting notes and get those summaries is probably going to be invaluable as you're running from one meeting to the next, or maybe you're just driving into work and want to listen into the top things before you head into your meetings for the day. So we are really moving beyond written communication. This is multimodal literacy, and it needs to be part of how we teach, how we assign things, how we reflect, and really, again, going back to just role redesign. And so let's see a couple other things that Google rolled out. Like I said, these are not just product upgrades. These are really total shifts. So we talked about audio. Okay, so you mentioned a little bit the help me refine in docs. I thought this one was really interesting because they very specifically said this is not AI rewriting your text. This is AI that is functioning like a writing coach, helping you strengthen your argument, tighten your structure, and even refine your tone. For students, I feel there's just so much research I've been reading lately about the impact and benefits of one-on-one tutoring.
Right.
So this definitely seems like that would be something there. But again, just overall, people sending better drafts, better reports, better newsletters, really getting a much better quality first draft instead of going through multiple. Another big one they announced was original video content in Google Vids. Video creation, I think, has really taken off lately. Typically, it's been expensive. It takes a lot of time, a lot of skill, and oftentimes a lot of money as well. But now anyone is really going to be able to generate high quality, realistic video clips using their VO2 model. And then one personal favorites actually is using Gemini inside of Google Meet. I don't know if you've ever tried the meeting note taker. I mean, I use Fireflies a lot.
You're right.
I think the only downside to their meeting note taker is it can't join a Zoom, right? It's very much
Right.
in just the Google ecosystem. But oh my goodness, the Google Doc that it creates after, I think this is a
It's
huge
so good.
advantage. I imagine Microsoft has this too. There's a huge advantage for these kind of ecosystems in that I can do something in the chat. I can be chatting with Gemini, or I can do something with my Gem. The fact that I can export it directly into email, or I can export it into a doc and then put it into slides, this kind of workflow efficiency is really going to be, I think, something that is going to be hard to ignore as you are making decisions about what tool to use.
Yeah, I was actually talking with the school about some of their different AI things that they were interested in. And they have a writing center in the library where students go to get help with their writing. And the director of technology said, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could help create an AI bot, some kind of an AI tool that would actually help the students with their writing? And I said, some of the ecosystems, they had a little bit of that in ChatGPT with the Canva. And then I got back to my hotel and I was reading about the new Google updates. And I emailed them and I said, you won't believe this, because they have Google for all the students and they started turning on the Gemini. I said, there's a writing coach right inside the Google that you can already use. So it's right there. It's very helpful. And like I said, it's a tool that's in your workflow. One of the other ones I noticed was data visualization. It'll take your data and it'll help you visualize it. And I've been talking a lot about entrepreneurship. And I think in a maximum, it's great to be an entrepreneur, but in the minimum, there'll probably be fewer employees in the future. And we're going to need every student to be prepared to be an entrepreneur when they graduate. And I was thinking about a lot of these tools. They can be your editor, right? You talked about really how the video production's really improved. You can make a promotional video for your business. You can use it to visualize your data. That would usually take a lot of employees. And obviously, a lot of people struggle with capital, right, to get their businesses launched. So I think it's really helpful that somebody can use all these tools and really just probably build a business from scratch. Now, that doesn't mean they don't need to know anything. They need to learn things, or they need to learn how to use a visual editor. They need to learn about data, right? So they have actual useful data that they can then visualize. We don't have a visualization of bad data. That's not going to help you at all. You want to think about how do you communicate with people to improve your message. So there's a lot of things there for students to learn. But I think that these tools, especially integrated into a proper workflow, could really help a student just launch a business while they're in high school.
Absolutely. And I think that practice that you get from doing that is so, so, so invaluable. It's not just about, okay, let me make money or whatever. It's about the process of that. It literally is like design thinking. Why is a product
Right.
needed? Who's your audience? Math, English, there's writing. Like there's every single element of something is literally included in that. It's one of my favorite projects that we highlight with Design 39 when they do the Maker 39. And literally kids in the second and third grade building their own businesses and really
Right.
learning what to do, how to pitch an idea, how to talk about an idea. But I think above all, it really just trains you to see opportunity. I think that's like a really, really, really important skill. Can you see what other people can't? And the only way, it is a muscle that you really have to build to be able to go about doing that. I really want to talk about just gems for a moment because
Right.
one of the things that I really liked about it when I was building it is I think a lot of people, first of all, we know already struggle with prompting. But what was really cool about gems, there's a little Google Assistant in there. So even if you don't get the instructions right, it literally will come and clean everything up and make sure it sounds good. And the results were incredible. I mean, they were incredible. I mean, there's only two downsides, and these are again going to be temporary. But one of them was you can only upload up to 10 knowledge sources. Although in some ways I saw that as a benefit because I was like, it might prevent people from making
Right.
their gem do everything. But then the other one, and this one kind of sucked. I hope they change it soon. And that is you can't share gems. So if you're trying to create one, it's hard to distribute it out to
Right. Right.
everybody. You have to give everyone the prompt and walk them through creating their own one as well. But the fact that they made this free inside of Workspace for Education, I think that's so generous. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. And that is part of the workspace. And it doesn't have to be a workspace, like a literal workspace in your company or entrepreneurship. We're all learning how to do these skills, right? How to build these things. And it allows you to advance so much faster. I remember giving a talk about how in the fall, how fast AI is advancing and that because of this, the students can do more and we should expect more of our students. And I referenced Ethan Mullick's original syllabus back in January 2023. He said, you have to use AI in every assignment that you do. I want you to tell me how you used it, what was successful for you, what was not, but I expect your assignments to be better. And I expect you to do more work. And at that point, we couldn't really define it. It's even harder a little bit to define now what exactly is better and what is more work, but we have an idea. And when I said this to the audience, the headmaster, the whole school, he looked at me like, oh my God, are you really saying? Yeah, I could tell it was in his head. His head was like, our students don't have time to do more work. They're already overburdened. And that was a part of the conference in the morning. And I could tell from his facial expression. And I said, I'm not saying to quantitatively do more work. I'm not saying do another million math problems. And then as a result of that, you'll get a higher score in your math test. I'm saying do more because you have these emerging tools. Then at that point, they're even more emerging than we have now with Google, that you could come up with your own climate solution. You could come up with your own app to solve a social problem. You could really generate your own business right there. So that's what I was saying that, and that's more, that's better than yes, another worksheet that the AI can do. And I wasn't saying give the kids 100 more worksheets, but I think it's hard. When I was with you the other day, when you were talking to the teachers and that at the training, and one teacher said, we teach how we've been taught or how we were taught, right? And then, of course, they continued teaching that way. And he seemed a little bit older in his 40s, so he's probably been teaching for 20 years in the same way. So when I said that, we want the students to work harder and do more, their gut was to just do more of what we're already doing. That's how people have that reaction. And it's going to take a while until you realize, I'm sure with designing schools, you've been able to use all these tools to really, your marketing is like incredible. You get a lot of video posting done, and you wouldn't be able to do all that without these tools. Imagine the technology that even existed 3 or 4 years ago. You might be able to post even a short video once a week or once every other week or something, but there is no way that a person, a solo entrepreneur with some assistance would be able to accomplish everything you've accomplished without these tools.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I say that all the time. I think it's not even so much just what you can accomplish, it's the speed and scale at which you
Right.
accomplish it as well. And I think a lot of it just allows for this is why I love the idea of like entrepreneurship and maybe share a little bit about the summer camp that you're doing, because
Right.
I really do think that being able to test and iterate is a really, really, really big part of it. And prior to this, that cost a lot of money. Oh, am I going to try this strategy or am I going to build this? And am I going to do this? It takes time, it takes money, it takes effort. And now you can turn something around in 24 hours and be able to do that, which I know we said we would save Canva for next time, but I think one of the things I'm most excited about from the Canva updates is you can code apps.
Right.
Literally,
Right.
by just putting in a few sentences, literally people at Canva Create were just sitting there making apps. And I think that is revolutionary. I don't ever use that word, but that to me inside of Canva where you can market, you can get creative, you can make a website, you can do all these different things. I literally this week, between Google's updates, OpenAI's updates, Canva's updates, I honestly don't know what more people want. And this really goes to show that this is not a technology challenge. Like we always say, this is not a technology challenge. This is a leadership challenge. This is a human challenge. This is the human work. People are always like, are people going to be replaced? The human work right now is to literally start putting these things into motion, start giving people these skills, start redesigning roles. I'm hearing that a lot now. And news.
Yeah. I was going to say last week, I used Replit, not the Google product, but I built a website from text and it built a basic page, all that. Of course, that would be like, oh my gosh, 2 years ago, but now people expect that. But then I wanted to add in a live news feed. So it just told me to go over to a place, get an API key that I had to register for. I put in the API key, it generated that. I had added a newsletter prompt, connected it to my MailChimp. I had done, it was for debate. So I had co-written with AI an analysis of the debate topic, and I created a podcast about it. And so I then uploaded the podcast to SoundCloud so that people could listen to the podcast. And I was emailing with the coach I know about something else. And she said, oh, I really like your topic essay. I said, oh, just see the podcast. And then she must have listened to the podcast. She wrote me back 20 minutes later. She's like, well, who are the podcasters? Are these people? I said, no, that's the Google LM. She hadn't heard about it. And, the Notebook LM. So she was like, wow. And she's like, oh, that's a little, I think she uses a bit freaky or something. I said, no, I said, it's kind of become normalized. I said, only get a little freaky if you let me record about 10 seconds of your voice, and I'll change one of the podcasters and to your voice and the other one into mine. And then it'll be like, we're doing the podcast. But I think it's hard, obviously, for people to keep up with all the technologies. But I think too, we're starting to see, somebody posted this on LinkedIn, I can't remember, that we're getting to the point where a lot of the models, and we're starting to see similar things, right? Like the Canva, nobody else really has this Notebook LLM podcast I've seen, but we're seeing these writing editors, these data visualization techniques, and they're really the ability to build a website. Now you can do it in Google, you can do it in Replit, like all these places. And a lot of these technologies are getting so sophisticated, they're almost beyond what most people would need. So like, yes, they can keep getting better. My point was like, while I see all these continual updates, we're going to get to the point where there's enough products for you to use. If you want to use it in Canva, if you want to use it through Google, if you want to use it through OpenAI, especially for normal small business work, if you're going to pick the ecosystem you want to be in. And I think part of the battle over the ecosystems is people are going to try to get you into their ecosystem. And if we keep our time to talk about memory at the end, what we can talk about how memory helps keep you in the ecosystem. But I see a lot of these companies moving into the same direction where they're trying to build these workspaces where everybody has the tools to creators in the creator economy and entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And I think it's also really important. I've been telling people this a lot lately. When we do things, we don't look at every single little tiny thing that's out there. We have a focus, we have a purpose, we have a vision, we have a criteria for what we adopt and what we do. For example, there are millions and millions and millions of different types of white t-shirts, but I don't go looking for every single update for the latest white t-shirt or the latest pair of denim or the latest pair of shoes.
Right.
You would drive yourself crazy. You go with what's around you and what you have, and you look at what your resources are, what's available to you, your budget. And I think it's really important to look at AI from this lens as well. And this is really, I think, one of the first times where social media and how we consume and learn has really coincided with such a big technological advancement to where it's information overload. I always go back to that Clay Shirky, right? You don't have information overload, you have filter failure. I think it's such a brilliant line. But one of the things I tell people is this is why design thinking can become really valuable for you. Because when you know what your criteria are, when you know what your goals and objectives and your vision is, you have a criteria for what you want to adopt and what you don't want to adopt. So for example, I've never played with Replit. I don't have a need to play with Replit. Do I see people posting it all day long? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have no need to play with Replit. Like I don't. I have a web designer. I'm happy with my website. I don't need to create random websites. Now, when Canva creates one, why am I now all of a sudden interested? I'm interested because it's accessible to kids, right? I'm accessible because as somebody who is working with schools and is helping to redesign what we do and how we do it, I have a lens through which I'm looking at these updates for. So now imagine if I was out there playing with Lovable, with Bolt, with Replit, with blah, 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 blah. It's just not my focus area right now. Are they cool? I'm sure. Amazing. And if it's somebody's focus area, amazing for you. It's not mine. And you have to have this lens as you filter through updates. But now that Canva's integrated it, you better believe I'm all in, because when you talk about entrepreneurship for kids and we talk about creating more creative environments, The fact that this is something that can go into kids' hands now means it's something that can be brought into instructional practices. It's something we can do to amplify creativity. We can now talk to teachers about how to integrate this as part of their prompting to design these lessons. And so having that filter and that vision for what you need, why you need it, and that's not to say that you shouldn't obviously look at other things, but as you are scanning headlines, it means that instead of feeling overwhelmed, you have an eye with which you are looking for certain things. And sure, new things may filter through, and that's great.
Right.
But I think right now in the beginning, until you don't have a solid foundation of something, being overwhelmed by everything is just probably one of the worst things to do. And I think it is showing because one of the latest reports, there was a new report from Gallup and the Walton Family Foundation, where they had surveyed nearly 3,500 Gen Z students and young adults. And the results are just an absolute wake up call for just about everybody, from families to educators to employers. And it was one of the things I really, really, really liked about the survey was they didn't just focus in on one group. They talked about schools and businesses together. So this was basically the headline. 79% of Gen Z say they're already using generative AI, but that doesn't mean they trust it or feel confident using it in meaningful ways. Only 1 in 3 Gen Z workers trust work created with AI more than work created by humans. And when it comes to critical thinking, I feel like a lot of teachers would enjoy hearing this. 49% believe AI is actually going to harm their ability to think carefully, not help it. And that's just a really big gap between exposure and understanding when they're telling you basically, look, we're using it, but we have no idea if we're doing it right. We're not sure if this is how we're supposed to be doing it. And so if you're assuming, if anybody is assuming that somebody is teaching other people, it's really important to think again or reconsider and really prioritize AI literacy, AI training, but not AI alone, really looking at it, like I said, through the context of design thinking or the problems you're trying to solve in your organization or how you're thinking of redefining roles. Only 28% of students say their school explicitly allows AI use. I was actually shocked to
Yeah.
hear this.
Right.
Nearly half said their school doesn't have clear policies at all. That kind of ambiguity doesn't just lead to confusion, it really leads to inequity because students in wealthier districts are far more likely to be given permission, are far more likely to probably have parents, friends, whatnot in jobs where either they're building AI or using AI. And so I think it's just so important. Schools can literally be the level playing field. And here's what's really wild: 57% of students at schools that had clear AI policies said that they felt much more confident after graduation walking into the world of work compared to those students whose schools were banning it or not teaching them about it. Their confidence really dropped. And I think this really matters because right now, so many people are focused on either discipline or detection and trying to really police AI use and really adopting that compliance model. But I think if there's one thing this report makes really clear, it's that clarity, not control, is going to be the key to building students' confidence. And we were at the AI show this year, and I really wish I could have counted the number of times I heard people say AI native. And followed by AI native was very quickly, we've got to catch up. These AI natives, they're using this all the time, they're doing this. And it really reminded me of how people used to talk about kids when iPads and Chromebooks were a thing 10, 15 years ago, calling them digital natives. And there's just so much research over the past 2 decades to tell us that just because kids are using it or just because they're young or it existed when they were born doesn't mean they know how to apply it in academic and professional settings. And I think that is our job. Honestly, it's so contradictory to hear how many people are either fearful of it because they think they're going to be replaced, but also at the same time, how many people do not take advantage of the opportunities that are literally going to make you invaluable inside your organization. There is a just insane need right now for people to really coach and mentor and teach people how to use AI. And I want to be so clear right now for anybody who thinks that putting a magic school or a school AI chatbot into kids' hands is check that box. They're the ones who are going to be confident. These kids are not walking into workplaces where they're going to be interfacing with chatbots. If the Google AI updates taught us anything, it's that this agentic workflow is here now, not 3 years from now, not 2 years from now, not even 1 year from now. Literally, it is here now. So really understanding what it means to make AI tools part of your team opens up an entirely new realm of opportunity for coaching, mentorship, teaching, learning, both in schools and in workplaces. And that is not just collaboration and working together with AI tools, but with people as well and looking at that intersection.
And I think the collaborative part of it, a couple of things stood out for the report about what Gen Z and your thoughts on it. One is, yeah, some schools are saying we can't do this. And obviously more and more people are saying that's wrong. The second thing is that schools don't have all the answers. Adults don't have all the answers. And what I think they should be doing is having these discussions with kids, not just because it's important to include kids. There's this theme, we need to include kids. It's part of their future. And I agree with that. But the reason I want to include them is a little bit selfish. They know a lot of things that I don't know. They experience the world differently. They spend a lot more time on TikTok. While they're on TikTok, they're learning a lot of things about AI. Some of them have stronger technical backgrounds than I do. So they have a lot to contribute. I was talking to a student at the school that I visited, and he was talking about a class he had. And he said, it's okay. The teacher learns from us, and we have to teach, or we learn things from the teacher, and then we have to teach the teacher things. And he was saying that in like a little bit negative way. And I said, I think that's the best class. I said, where everybody's learning from one another. I said, in this era, when technology, look how fast things are changing. Look how fast things are changing in the world. There's no way that everybody knows. And when I was talking to the director of technology, he used to be a teacher. He said, when I started teaching, there was only two ways students could learn. They could learn from the textbook or they could learn from what I told them. And that was it. And he said, then there came the internet. Of course, they could learn more from the internet. And they started learning things I didn't know. He said, now we have AI that can teach them. It opens up the whole world. He said, the teacher is now one way that students can learn. And I think when we think about learning about AI and generative AI and even what's coming after it, we're already starting to see that. We're starting to move. I'll just briefly mention Meta has a new thing called a large concept model instead of a large language model. There's a whole conference that's happening at MIT in a few weeks called Beyond Bots. So we're already starting to push through these things. And to your point, we can't just have the bots in magic school, but it's like a collective, we talk about collective intelligence and collective knowledge and how school shouldn't be grouped by age anymore. And that's not just between the students, that's between the adults and the students as well. We should really have a broader perspective on what a learning community is.
Absolutely. These are the things, again, I go back to that's the human work, right? Sure, your AI tool can draft up the strategy, it can draft up the plan, it can draft up the PD, the emails, and
Right.
all the components that you need. But the actual initiative taking, motivating people, inspiring people, I always go back to, right, that one chart, the data where they looked at the trending skills and then character and communication will lead the way. Those are the things they say in there. Can you motivate people? Can you inspire them? Can you get them to get excited about things, but also have that strategy and vision? And I think that's where, again, the more I say this out loud, it's so easy to be not optimistic. And I know I fall
Right.
into that sometimes. I feel like I'm such an optimistic person about technology in the future, but it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole. But then you start talking about these things and you start looking at the things that people are not doing and the big, big, big gaping voids we have. And you realize there's just so much opportunity for what it is we can do. But if there's one really big takeaway, I always feel there's one really big takeaway we have in each episode. The one really big takeaway from this one would be that young people need our support. Not make the assumption that just because they're using AI or that even that they're teaching you ChatGPT. To some degree, I think it's amazing. And yes, it's collaborative and it's great, but we cannot rely on our kids to teach the adults what it is we
Right.
should be knowing. Like there should really be a much more informed, much more structured sort of approach around this because they need us too. This is not just about learning ChatGPT or adopting an AI tool. This is really, like I said, as we are hearing, again, these are the signals we always say pay attention to. Complete redesign of how we work.
And we've taken on, in some ways, there's this tension. Teachers, they don't want to be left out for any reason. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to be left out of the conversation. But there is this attitude of the kids can learn the AI, they're AI natives, right or wrong, as you point out. It's often wrong, but right. But no one says just let the kids learn chemistry on their own or just let them learn calculus on their own. I mean, quite honestly, it's probably easier to learn biology on your own or learn calculus on your own that has a very fixed curriculum that there's already textbooks for, there's ways of established teaching for, right? Than it is to learn about AI on your own. It's
So true.
it's so many things. So like I say, well, if we're just saying let the kids learn that on their own, then let them learn everything on their own. I don't know how we decide. So obviously, it's a little bit of implicit of I don't want to deal with it. So let them learn that on their own. The biology teachers are never saying let them learn biology on their own. And we've delegated the most complicated thing, not because you have to code or anything like that, but just because it's such a dynamic technology, ever changing the way they think about the world, like the process, it's going to affect their careers, their college life, all these things. You're like, just go deal with all that. You can figure out the future of the world on your own, but I have to be here to teach you biology. Without my human connection to you, you're not going to learn how a cell works, right? It's literally the most ridiculous, like contrast of ideas that one could possibly come up with.
I think that is so true. And we're speaking of skills and learning. OpenAI released a new feature, and that was memory. And I feel like it was really in December when I think we shared this one of the first times and made this analogy. When people are younger, right? When kids are younger, one of the first things we do is we look at the building blocks, right? Reading, writing, math. And one of the reasons those building blocks really matter, like people always say, especially reading, if you don't
Right.
get it by third grade, it's really hard to recover later. And one of the reasons that really matters is because, yes, independently, all of those are extremely important. But what's even more important and powerful is what happens when you can combine them. And the bigger things it is you can do, then you add speaking into the mix and you can do even more. And very much the same is, I remember this is the first time we framed it that way. The same kind of analogy is what you should make for AI tools. A lot of times you hear feature updates, vision, voice, memory, reasoning. And independently, these are amazing features. But I've noticed people have a hard time contextualizing the actual meaning and really impact of these. And one of the things we always say is it's important to think about what happens when somebody has exponential reasoning, memory,
Right.
vision, and voice. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to let you share the update that OpenAI made. Sam Altman tweeted every once in a while, there's an update that comes and it just can't sleep. So this is really, really, really something big that they've released. And I think it's something that at first glance can seem cool, but I think there's a lot of implications behind it as well. So tell us about memory and OpenAI.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like it said, like you always, and of course it's true to a degree, like, you have this conversation, right? And you want to have kind of a conversation about a given topic within a prompt. But the new thing, generally speaking, they came out with this is as long as you have the memory enabled, it gives you the option to turn it off. But as long as you have the memory enabled, it'll remember the content between the conversations, right? So if you think about just a comparison or analogy, over the last couple of years, we met in spring 2023, we've gotten to know each other, right? So every conversation is not a new conversation. So when all the new Google things came out, like I said, I thought of you and the teammates and when we were doing the podcast, right? It wasn't like, oh, gee, if I talked to Sabba about it in this way, what would she think? She would think, what's a teammate, right? I already know that about you. I import that knowledge from another place and from a different conversation. So now is what it does is it contextualizes, it can understand what you're talking about and what your ideas are across conversations. And as you say, memory and long-term memory, which is now that is, right, is fundamental to the development of intelligence. But on a practical side, there's a couple of really significant implications. One is that with prompting, you used to have to tell it everything, right? At the beginning of the prompt, like, okay, so I'm a teacher, I'm trying to build this lesson. Now it kind of remembers that you're a teacher and you had a conversation about some other thing, which can be an upside and a downside because we're trying to play with different examples. Maybe sometimes for a business, other times for a teacher, other times for a professor. But basically it gets to know you overall and it understands other concerns and contexts and things that you've researched. And it can bring that context, it inputs that context for you into the prompt. The same way I say, okay, let's talk about all these new Google tools as teammates. So it makes prompting a little bit easier. It takes a little bit of the load off. But the second thing, and I hinted at this earlier, incentivizes people to stay within an ecosystem because they say, okay, I'm going to do this thing on ChatGPT. Then I'm going to go do this thing in the Google Workspace. Then I'm going to go do this other thing, right, in Canva. Well, each of those things now don't fully know me. Maybe that's good or bad. We could have a discussion about that. And certainly as humans, even we work with different people on different things and we spread around how much people know about each other. So it may be fine, but if you really want that to really know, if you want that like tool, that system, that ecosystem to know you well, the more work, and you leave the privacy controls off, the more work that you do within that system, the better it's going to get to know you, the better it's going to be able to work with you. Just as if you work with somebody for a long time, you can work with them. Some people, it's like a perfect, everything's perfect. Other times it's, oh, well, they disagree about this or that, but you already know what you disagree about. You already know your different perspectives that you bring to different things, which still makes it easier to work with. And there's other broader implications that I wrote about that we have to get all into on the podcast. But I think those are a couple big things. I guess a third one I should mention, though, since we're talking about education, is that it gets to know the student, right? We always kind of imagine this world of like, well, individualized education. And people say, well, that's not really happening. It didn't really happen because it didn't have memory, right? It couldn't remember everything about the student, but now it'll remember what you know about math. And it's still the ways to go. This is kind of the foundations of the technology, but as it knows exactly what you know about math and how you learn and how you learn math and all these types of things, That's why these things can support more neurodivergence really than can happen in any classroom. Then it's going to be able to teach you better.
So for this one, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. And the reason I didn't do the overview is I'm not going to lie. I feel in the past 2 weeks, maybe even a little bit more, once this, like, you can now really clearly see the trajectory towards ChatGPT 5. You can really see what a significant shift it's probably going to be, given these little hints that we're getting around the interaction with it, the personality of it, the voice of it, the memory of it now. And I think it is so easy as like one of those like defining moments where if you cross the line into this threshold of like this new space, what you should be so clear on what it is you're giving out. Because right now, memory is only available. So this feature is only available in, I think, regular accounts. So if you have a team account, if you have an enterprise account, it's not in there. And it is also really important to know this is a feature you can turn off.
Right.
But I don't know. Okay. So like one, you know what it reminded me of? There's this line in the movie. So if you've never seen the movie The Last Screenwriter, it came out last year. It's absolutely incredible. I feel like it really deals with a lot of the emotional complexities of what it means to have these AI tools as your teammates. And there's a part in there. So in The Last Screenwriter, the AI is specifically designed to help authors, and it's there to give them guidance, feedback, coach them, all that kind of stuff. And there's a line in there where he writes something and the AI is, I don't think you should write that. I think it should be this. I hope you don't mind that I changed it. And he does mind. And he almost gets in a bit of a back and forth and it ends up closing it. But I think it's really important. And I don't have an answer to this. And I personally do not have this on. It's something I really, really, really struggle with. I don't know what it's like to live with somebody that knows you better than you know yourself. I was talking to my sister about this and I was like, we talk every day. We have 1,000 chats. I've known you your whole life.
Right.
But I don't know every single intricacy of how you think, what you do. And I think a big part of this also has to do with what you put in there, right? But I think if you're going to ask it for relationship advice and you're going to ask it for cooking feedback and you're going to ask it for help on work projects, and then you're also going to ask it for help in all these other areas. I mean, I just don't think we understand what that means to have, like, I always say, would you pick up and hand somebody your phone tomorrow and be like, here, learn everything about me?
Right.
Hell no, you wouldn't. I would love to see the person that would be like, hey, I heard that on the podcast. And like, can I mail you my phone and let you see all my messages and my Instagram and my everything? Absolutely not. The number one thing, in fact, most people ask when we go in and we do enterprise training for AI tools is, can everybody see what I'm writing?
Right.
So we definitely are not comfortable sharing that with people. Why now are you? I just think, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is the choice you have to make. Is that something you are comfortable with? And I think it's important to know your life's not going to be over. ChatGPT will still be amazing for you if you choose to say no. And
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. And somebody posted on LinkedIn, oh, I turn it off sometimes because I mostly use it for work. And I don't think work needs to know about my personal life or maybe a personal related query, maybe about my health. A lot of people are using them for like a therapist. My work doesn't need to know about that. And if you think about it, and I was saying this a little bit earlier, even when I was talking about the memory, okay, we talk to different people about different things. You don't share what maybe you tell your therapist, right, with everyone at work or your boss, right, or those types of things. And the one thing that makes AI different is you have an AI that can do everything. So imagine, you probably still wouldn't, but right, imagine your boss was a therapist, a statistician, a graphic designer, right, like a marriage counselor, a doctor. So somehow this like one person has all these skills and could do all these things better than all the other therapists, doctors, right, that you knew about. So maybe you would, but that's something when we say that AI is smarter than us, or can become smarter than us. And maybe that's right around the corner. Kind of people just, they think about that intellectually. They don't really think about, oh, okay, well, I could interact with everything. And sure, maybe there's some part like your sister's married, have kids. It doesn't tell you about every conversation she has with her husband as much as you talk.
absolutely.
But
No,
that
I said that we said the same
conversation,
thing.
right? Could that conversation help her at work? And I don't mean that like in a negative way. Maybe they could learn something about her, like how she expresses herself when she's really happy or in a big fight or something like that, dealing with the kids. Could that little trait that they see come out in those instances, could that help her express herself better in a work-related document? Of course it's possible, or in a work situation, right? But you wouldn't want the AI, say she was up on stage like, giving a presentation to her employees or somebody. She was a little stressed and the AI said, hey, remember that when you were stressed in that conversation with your husband, remember what you did and it solved it? That would freak out the normal person. So can it be helpful to literally know absolutely everything about you? Yes. But I do think one thing that people don't realize is how much these companies already know about us beyond what we're typing into the chatbots, right? They know everyone we're connected to on the internet. They know how much time people spend in particular places, which they can then make like assumptions about their personal life. Like they know like where you go, how much time you spend at work, which may indicate or if you're a workaholic or not, right? And they already have a lot of this data. So not turning on the memory, people are going to feel uncomfortable, but say you didn't turn the memory on at all. These companies still probably know more about you than you realize and probably take more of all those broadly different situations into account, maybe even when marketing a product to you.
We talk about this all the time. I
Right.
100% agree with you. I do think though we are crossing a new threshold. And I think if you are somebody who is, because, okay, I'm going to read some of the tweets from what they shared. Okay, so this is if you Sam Altman, and I know a lot of people don't like Twitter or X or whatever, but honestly, this is where a lot of those signals that we bring to you come from, because this is where all these people are tweeting in real time. So one of the things he shared just yesterday, we have greatly improved memory in ChatGPT. It can now reference all your past conversations. This is a surprisingly great feature in my opinion, and it points at something we're excited about. AI systems that get to know you over your life and become extremely useful and personalized. He says it rolls out today for pro users and soon for plus. Accept users in the EEA, UK, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. And he goes, call me Liechtenstein, and let's work this out. And he tells people, of course, you can opt out of memory. You can use the temporary chat or turn it off. But I think it's really, this to me, I can't remember. I think it was me and you who were talking about this. Like I said, you are at a crossroads right now where all the things that you have ever known to be true, all the ways in which you may have done things. And I will tell you, this is something, if you know me, you know that I recently invested in something in another country because I think people should have options. And I think that we are literally at a crossroads. Yes, a lot of these companies know things about you from social media and whatever. But guess what? There are countries where your data is more private and where you are more protected than, say, currently here in the United States. There are countries that are going to have better social safety nets than perhaps here in the United States. There are places that better support the creator economy than perhaps here in the United States. And I just think it is so, so, so important right now for every single, I think this is so important to bring to kids. This is one conversation people don't even bring to kids right now is, do you actually still want to live where you grew up? Because it is so important to know you have options. And most people in the United States don't even ever go outside their city, their town, their state, let alone begin thinking about how the rest of the world could be accessible. Not to mention the stereotypes people have about so many other parts of the world and this sort of exceptionalism mindset that they're taught from a really young age. And so I just want to say, if you are ever with me in a workshop, one of the things I say is just because I talk about AI doesn't mean I like AI, and it definitely doesn't mean I like what it's doing to people. I think, that I feel because we talk about this every single week and because of what we see and what we know, I think we're able to see the wide gaps, the inequity, much more so than people who don't really understand what's happening. And
Yeah,
I think,
a couple of things to your point, just because I talk about this and you say do a lot of trainings, it doesn't mean I support it on. I think you see a lot of, because obviously LinkedIn, we're connected with a lot of people who do this. It's almost like a regular reminder. Just because I'm telling you about this doesn't mean I believe it. Or sometimes I'll just post something about, me, I like to talk about AGI, like some advance in AGI, and someone will comment on it like, hey, this stuff can be really bad. And I'll be like, I'm not taking a position on whether it's good or bad. I'm just sharing this information because I think it might be interesting. And it is part of this very dynamic world, right? The world is changing so much. We have so much more intelligence, but also so many more decisions being just made based on the raw exercise of power. It's like a little bit strange, but I think that, all these things that come to light, they're all connected. It's hard. I think people still see them as
or they don't see them at all. That's a really big part of what we see.
Or they only see what's going on in their space, right? Like in the US right now, there's big challenges about the rule of law. There's big challenges about the state of the economy. There's big challenges about emerging artificial intelligence. There's big challenges about how much power we want the executive to have. These are related, right? If you don't have the rule of law, you're not going to be able to sustain the economy because people aren't going to be willing to enter into contracts, right? Those are related to one another. This really powerful AI, if you have more executive power and the executive head can magnify even great amount of power it already has with AI, then that becomes like a dilemma. The other thing I was thinking about, it's so interesting to think about, people debate about what's called an open source model. Should a basic person have all the capabilities that's in ChatGPT 5? Should you just be able to have that on your computer or a couple of nice computers to run that, but probably not about much more? Okay. And if the world is becoming more autocratic, and obviously an individual person or people can't necessarily challenge all that integrated military and AI power together, but someone with a language model, no, and it doesn't have to be a language model. Maybe that wouldn't be sufficient. Somebody with a sophisticated AI could take that down. How were the Nazis arguably defeated? There's various theories. Like, how are the Nazis by somebody who cracked the German cryptography? They were defeated by a creative person using technology. To get to the broader question you were raising, everything is defined in choice. And what you said about the students, it's okay. You don't want to teach kids anything about AI. I disagree with you, but okay, but can you bracket out this one thing? Can you teach them whether when they use the AIs can now learn everything about them and keep that in the memory for the rest of their lives? Can we at least agree to teach that? I have no idea what the objection to that is, other than they'll have less time to study what a cell is. I have no idea. So I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just important to know that when you see feature updates and you see things, you're not missing out on anything by rushing and going and turning everything on and doing all of those things. I do think now when you do start to see AI updates, it is really, really, really important to pause and reflect. I feel it just went from being something fun 2 years ago. It was helpful. Yeah, you want to start a business, you want to do this and that. Yeah, it's
Right,
great.
right.
But I do think there are really, really, really serious implications now and I think if people were more prepared, if people were having better conversations about the technology and people were talking about this, I think then we would be okay. But that gap between what people know, what people listen to, and what AI companies are aggressively moving forward on is really, really, really wide. And I think that is particularly what makes it concerning. You'll start to see prompts probably now where we saw this one a while ago that went viral. Tell me something about me that I don't know, or tell
Right,
me
right.
something about me based on your interactions with me. And people share that's funny. And I don't think you understand what it means to have a technology that is now knowing you better than you know yourself or is able to do these things. And so I just go back to, again, the importance of building human connection because people will turn to these tools. I think one thing this conversation made me think of right now, and this might not come out the most articulate because I literally just am thinking through it now, but I actually think one of the things that people were very against was anthropomorphizing AI. But what I've come to observe is that people are way more trusting of AI than they are of people. And I almost wonder if people did start to see AI, they see that neighbor across from them, you are way more willing to give all your data and your private thoughts to a computer than you are to the person sitting next to you. And that tells me that you trust that computer more than you trust the person next to you because you trust a computer more than you trust a human. And
Yeah,
I think that anthropomorphizing AI may actually be doing people a huge disservice. And again, I just go back to raise the bar, expect more from people and what they're able to process and think critically about so that we can start to have more sophisticated conversations about the technology that is rapidly accelerating in our lives.
yeah, I think people trust the AI a little bit more too, because it always gives you a reason to answer. Like you could take it or leave it, but there's always some reasoning and ideas behind it. Where it's sometimes you're at work and you have this idea and your boss is like, no. And you're like, why? Because I'm the boss, right? Or like, why is our government adopting this policy? Well, I'm the president. I get to decide. I want the vote. That's just like a raw exercise of power. And nobody really likes that. People can understand different reasons and people understand that people disagree, or they should understand that. But when someone just said you come up with some brilliant marketing plan for the business and it's already, say, starting to generate revenue and your boss just, no, we can't do that. So I see that too, like a little bit with these law firms, right? You see a lot of these junior associates quitting because they have all these good arguments as to why you shouldn't cave into certain things, but the partners get to decide. And even the partners are like, oh, we're not super comfortable with this, but yeah, we decide to do it. They don't have any reasons that are about the law or anything like that, or address any of the points. It's often the junior associates that are making. It's just a raw exercise of power. So I hope that as intelligence explodes, and I really think we're living in a world of intelligence explosion, whether you want to call it AGI, I don't care. I don't care what you call it. You can call it soup. We're living in an era of intelligence explosion, and everyone just imagines that we're going to use all this intelligence and improve things. But in order for that to happen, people have to understand it. They have to become educated. They have to think about it. They have to think about the role, their own relationship with the world and how the world's changing. Okay.
Absolutely. And so I think a really big theme for today is again, these are not just technology updates or product upgrades. This is really completely reshaping the roles, our environments, and really just pretty much everything about everything we're used to. And so some of the questions to be thinking about is what is the kind of work you really want to hold on to? What are some of the things that you think are really important for people to be doing? And what are some of the things that you think our AI teammates can do? Like I said, we will drop a chapter of the book From Tools to Teammates into the show notes for you. As always, if you have any questions at all, let us know. But again, really be thinking about, I think we're all thinking about this. What does it mean to work in new ways, to learn in new ways, and above all, to lead in new ways? Because if there's one message we got loud and clear this week across the board from just about everyone, it's that AI is no longer optional. It's here, and it is time to start really integrating it in. So as always, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, let us know, and we will see you next week.
It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Designing Schools community. Leaving a review for the podcast helps others learn about the show, giving them the gift of knowledge and allowing this community to help create access and exposure to ideas and opportunities others may not even know exist.